In all likelihood, I would have ignored the situation and continued living my life without her, but it was his smirk that caused me to change my mind. With that smirk, he forced my hand, and regardless of whether or not she saw it, the complete disrespect that they showed to me tore at my very being. I had been married to Samantha for 6 years, and it was obvious that she would not be my wife for much longer. Due to the fact that I had been working excessively hard for the past half a year, our marriage was experiencing some difficulties. Not only was I in the running for a significant promotion, but it would also come with a significant increase in my salary. Consequently, Sam was able to resign from her position, and we were able to begin our family. In addition to this, Samantha is a stunningly beautiful woman, which is another issue. When men flirt with her, she is one of those drop-dead babes who has never taken the time to learn how to be a bitch. Despite the fact that she did not exactly respond to the flirtation, she has a beautiful smile that may be misinterpreted. As a result of the fact that Sam is strikingly similar to Scarlett Johansson, with the same stunning appearance and strong physique, but with a greater height, men are naturally drawn to her. My suspicions had been growing for some time. She was working an excessive number of late nights, and she was traveling out of town more frequently. However, the smirk that he wore at the holiday party that their company hosted was the evidence that proved his guilt. In order to get Sam to invite me to this party, I almost had to coerce him, and now I understood why. Within my family, respect is a very important value. Let me introduce myself. My name is John Simon. I will provide you with just one illustration if you will allow me to have your attention for a brief period of time. Back when I was in high school, I was the shortstop for the varsity team and I was named an all-star. We were playing against the team that had the best chance of preventing us from winning the conference championship. It was early in the season on that particular day. I was hit in the head by a fastball that was thrown by the opposing pitcher. Although it did not hit my face, the ball did hit me in the helmet. When I got up, I immediately began jogging to first. After looking over at the pitcher, he gave me a smirk and then quietly mouthed the words "fuck you." I charged the mound and surprised him to the point of being completely taken aback. Instead of playing patty cake, as is customary in most baseball fights, I struck him with my fist right in the nose, causing him to break his nose and sending blood gushing all over his pretty white uniform. After that, everything went from bad to worse. A hearing was scheduled to determine whether or not I would be permanently banned, and I was suspended. To a certain extent, my coach was disgusted with me, but my grandfather was in agreement with me. I was able to witness what that individual did and said to you when he took me home. You can't allow these cretins to treat you with disrespect. As soon as they realize they have your balls, everything starts to go downhill. On the other hand, the coach's disapproval was upsetting to me. For the past 3 years, he had served as my coach, and I desired to earn his respect. The following day, when I showed up in his office, he gave me a lecture that I have never forgotten up until this very moment. What do you care what some lowlife says to you? You know where. I grew up, down at State and 75th, where some gangbanger was always trying to get me riled up. I was lucky, neither my mother nor father would tolerate any fighting. That kept me on the straight path to college and out of the slammer. Now I live where I want, doing a job I love, and those stupid gangbangers are either dead, in jail, or living in a room with a needle in their arm. So here's the thing, if you get to play for me again, there will be no more fighting, no matter what the circumstance. I ultimately had to serve a suspension of 3 games. Ron Mueller, the opposing catcher, shows up at the hearing, which indicates that somebody was looking out for me on that occasion. It would appear that he was outraged by the manner in which his coach was attempting to achieve victory. It was their coach who had given the order for the pitcher to throw that ball with the intention of permanently banning me from the team. My ass was saved by Ron, who did not want to win the championship in that manner. In the end, Ron became the catcher for my college team, and he also ended up being the best man at my wedding to Sam. Back to the present, I would have been able to handle it if Samantha had shown some respect and simply said, "It's over, and I'm leaving." I have been dumped before, although it hasn't been since college, and it wasn't by a woman who stood in front of 100 of our friends and family members and vowed to love me forever. Don't believe me when I say that I could have handled it. I found myself in the position of one of those cartoon characters, with my coach on one shoulder whispering in my left ear, "Take the high road and walk away," and my father on the other shoulder shouting in my right ear, "Crush them both, son." This was due to the fact that Sam had chosen her path, obviously had slept with her co-worker Ted Harris, and was coming home to give me seconds. Obtaining the concrete proof that I required did not require a significant amount of time or any covert spy techniques. On Monday morning, following her company party, I took the day off from work in order to hire a divorce attorney and retain the services of a private investigator. When Sam called me on the first night of that same week to let me know that she was working late, I called the former police detective, and he accompanied them to the townhouse that was suspected of being the location of the crime. Despite the fact that there are no photographs of them actually being together, I am certain that they did not spend 2 hours in his townhouse analyzing spreadsheets. Before Sam's next visit to his place, everything was prepared and ready to go. I received a phone call from her on Friday evening informing me that she and a couple of the women from the office were going to have dinner and drinks together. I drove over to the address that the detective had given me, and there was Sam's car parked in the drive. I told John, "Don't wait up, it's been a while since I had a girls' night out." I arrived at the address an hour after she had called me. I knocked on the door, and I was taken aback when he answered it while he was standing in his bathrobe with the same smirk on his face. "Don't get any ideas, John. I'm a black belt in karate." "I'm not here to start anything," Ted responded to John. "She's yours now, and the last thing I need is a lying, cheating woman for a wife. Tell Sam to come to the door so I can deliver these papers." I showed him the envelope that was made of paper. I called out, "Sam, come downstairs. There is no need to hide." Sam came down the stairs wearing a robe that was identical to the one that Mr. Ted was wearing. Nearly smiling, I was. "Sam, here are the divorce papers. Get yourself a lawyer and have him or her contact mine to work out the settlement. Do not come home tonight or any time before tomorrow evening. By then, I'll have my stuff out of our apartment, and you can come back." The envelope was taken by Sam as if it were a radioactive substance. "John, my folks and my brother's family were supposed to come for brunch tomorrow. What am I supposed to tell them if I'm not there?" "Not a problem, Sam. Just before I came over here, I emailed your brother and gave him this address. I told him you and Ted would be hosting your family here instead of at our apartment. I'm assuming he'll get the message in time. If not, I'll let them know about the change in venue when they arrive tomorrow. Bye." I looked at Sam. She was starting to break down and cry, but then I saw it on her left hand and almost lost my cool. "Sam, you didn't even have the decency to take off my grandmother's wedding ring when you betrayed this bastard. Give it to me now. The ring you gave me is in the envelope with the divorce papers." Sam completely broke down at this point, but she did manage to remove the ring from her finger. I left without so much as uttering a single word. Upon hearing the doorbell ring on Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, I was not entirely taken aback by the event. It is possible that her brother did not receive my email in a timely manner. As soon as I looked out the window and saw Sam's family sitting on the porch, my first thought was, this is going to be very awkward. It wasn't until I opened the door that I realized how awkward the situation was. The next thing that happened was that her brother, mother, and father tried their best to persuade me that I should let Sam go back home and drop the divorce. They said, "John, we are sorry. I got your email, and I talked to Sam. Can we come in and talk?" After I left, it appears that Sam went to her brother's house, where Ted confessed everything and asked for their assistance by asking for their assistance. Sam knew that I had a deep affection for her mother and father, particularly because my parents had relocated to the Sunshine State following my father's retirement. Counseling, forgiveness, self-pity, and other topics were discussed among the three of them. During the subsequent hour, I spent my time attempting to persuade them that it was not going to take place. At the time of their departure, there was not a single smile on anyone's face. It took every ounce of self-control I could muster to refrain from giving my mother-in-law a hug when she walked out onto the front porch. Despite the fact that she was crying, I did not give her a hug because I wanted to reassure her that everything was fine, but it was not. Up until the divorce was finalized, we continued to dance as we had been doing for the past few months. I did not want to talk as much as she did. Counseling was requested by her attorney, but I thought it would be a waste of both time and money to pay for it. Unfaithfulness on the part of my wife caused the marriage to be irreparably damaged. In the week leading up to the divorce, Ron extended an invitation to me to join him for dinner at his home. Due to the fact that his wife, Gerald, and Samantha continued to communicate on occasion, he was aware of more of the sour details of the reasons why Sam and I had broken up than I was. I was observing his wife, Jelly, as she prepared dinner while I was sitting in his kitchen. We all refer to her as Jelly, and she was 7 months pregnant and seemed to be glowing from the inside out. Ron noticed that I was staring at her stomach, and he was aware of what I was thinking. I walked over to the refrigerator and put my arm around Jelly's waist as I was leaving. I said, "John, let's go out on the porch and chat. I'll meet you out there, my bee's gone." I then went onto the refrigerator. "He adores you, Jelly. Don't ever cheat on him." "Why would I do that, John? I love that man, and we're going to have a little boy soon." "I'm not crazy," I would have said about Samantha a year ago. "I'm not crazy," I would have said. Look at us now, 6 days from a divorce. Sam got stupid, John. I'm not near that dumb. Ron's not going to try to talk me out of this, is he? Go on out there and listen to what he has to say. I'll tell you what I tell Sam every time she calls. I'll support the two of you any way I can, except to give either of you my opinion on what you two should do. I gave Jelly a kiss on the cheek and then we took a stroll outside. A beer was given to Ron, and I waited for him to take it. "John, Sam wants to meet with you and talk before the divorce is final. She called me and asked me to ask you." No surprise there. I'd given it some thought because this isn't the first time she's asked. Why should I give her the satisfaction of her contrition? All it will do is ease her mind, and I'm not going to give her that. I wouldn't either, John, but let me ask you, do you have any unresolved questions that she can answer for you? If so, turn this around on her. Get the answers to your questions first, then do whatever, walk out, stay and listen, whatever. It makes perfect sense what he said, therefore, you didn't bring me out here to give her another chance, did you? I do not want anything other than what is best for you, John. Taking that course of action with regard to the divorce is something that I agree with you on. I met Sam at a small cafe the night before our court date. Thanks for meeting with me, John, Sam said, looking as though she was about to burst out in tears. It took every ounce of my willpower to refrain from taking her small hands in mine. The opportunity to initiate the conversation was not afforded to her by me. "Sam, I know you have things you need or want to say to me, but first, I have a couple questions." The waiter chose that moment to take our drink orders and start the spiel about the chef's specials. I interrupted him as politely as I could, ordered a bottle of wine and the chef's salad to split, and asked the waiter to please give us as much privacy as possible. He understood. "In the first place, Sam, I want to know why. When I thought we had something unique, I was wrong." "John, we did, but the reasons for my actions are all tired cliches. Our actions were taken. 7 years had passed since we had been together and unattached. At my place of employment, there was a handsome man who complimented me on everything and anything. He was able to captivate my attention. As time went on, you found yourself either thinking about or actually being at work more and more. I do not agree, Sam. You should know that I only put in the hours to get the promotion you wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and I was trying to make that possible for you. John, I am aware of that. I was aware of it at the time as well, but at the time, I was acting like a self-centered jerk by wanting everything right away. Honestly, I can't believe how badly I messed up on this. It had been less than a year since we had last seen our children. It was still difficult for me to hold her hand, despite the fact that tears were streaming down her face. I even had names. Okay, I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't ask, but I couldn't help but wonder, was he that much more capable in bed than I was? Sam took me by surprise. She began to laugh through her tears and said, no, 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 he doesn't even come close to being able to compete with your lovemaking. I was never required to put on a show for you." Sam hadn't seen the waiter coming up behind her when she said this, and when he dropped off the wine, he took a moment to look at my lap and was smiling when he left. Sam turned beet red, and we laughed together for the first time in 6 months. We finished our salads and the wine. Sam spent the time trying to get me to accept her apology, but I did hold out, telling her I might one day, but that it was too raw and too soon. The final bombshell was dropped on me by Sam as we were getting ready to leave. "This is yet another reason for my actions, John," he claimed. "One can be as immobile as a statue." There were no tears, and there was no shouting. Every night, I cry myself to sleep off my worries. In all honesty, Sam, did you love me? I loved you more than you will ever know, but before we get into that, let's make sure we have a few things under our belts. This evening, you made reference to your actions on multiple occasions. Let's accept the truth, you cheated on me, Sam. Let's not sugarcoat it. Even though you were supposed to be faithful and give up all other men, you went and had sexual relations with another man. Secondly, it is entirely up to me to decide whether I will go home tonight and cry or get drunk. There is a good chance that you and Ted will be a couple after our divorce is finalized tomorrow. For example, he has already demonstrated his opinion of me by cheating on my wife, putting an end to my marriage, and laughing at me throughout the entire process. For example, if I were to cry right now or if I were to tell you about my bad nights, you would eventually tell him about it. Then that conceited jerk will have one more laugh at my expense, and I will be pleased. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, Sam. You need to avoid coming face to face with the demon that is hiding just below the surface. It was a modern no-fault divorce with an equitable division of property, and on that day, the marriage had just ended. I did not go to court the following day, my attorney handled it. Months passed since the divorce. I used the time to plan. I did get that promotion at work and the great bump in pay, but I didn't have anyone or anything to spend it on. I probably spent too much time on Reddit after Ron told me about it over drinks one night. I read the stories, taking notes and ranking my favorite methods for revenge. Ideas that would land me in jail ranked pretty low, and psychological terror ranked pretty high. The rankings changed after I had the misfortune of bumping into Ted one afternoon. Ron gave me the lowdown on the cheating stories and said that there were hundreds of stories in which the jilted husband got revenge on the ex and her lover. I read the stories and took notes. I didn't know it at the time, but following our divorce, Ted and Sam did start dating again and were now engaged. Ted let me know that he won, I lost. Sam was a fantastic woman that he couldn't get enough of, and I must have something. And if you're really interested, Ed, in some revenge, then just sit tight for a while, and one day I'll call you and ask for a favor, nothing illegal, but very important. I went home that night, and my idea started to gel, but could I trust Helen to keep her mouth shut? I discreetly made an inquiry to someone I could trust, and he confirmed Helen's story. Helen and Ted had dated, and their breakup coincided with Sam and Ted's now open relationship. While we talked, my source apologized for having missed the first affair and not giving me a heads up. He graciously offered that the company's senior management was tired of the romantic trauma surrounding Ted's affairs and were in the process of rewriting the corporate policies regarding workplace romances, and that Ted was rumored to be skating on very thin ice. During my separation, in the 2 months since the divorce, I'd been hiring an escort for my sexual and social release, Cindy Fox, her professional name, I assume. Cindy and I would go to dinner or a show every 2 to 3 weeks and would end up in bed for a couple of hours of sex before she went home. It cost me a bundle, but like I said, I had nowhere else to spend my increased paycheck since my promotion. It was my first time paying for sex, at least directly, but I didn't want to tempt myself with a rebound relationship, so Sydney became my go-to lady whenever the urge hit me. She also became an integral part of my plans. Helen called me the next day. Sam was scheduled to be out of town in 2 weeks for 3 days and nights. Helen contacted Ted and arranged to meet him the first night of Sam's trip at the downtown Hyatt Lounge just for drinks and conversation, but I'm certain that Ted was thinking that he might end up with Helen one last time. I told Helen that if she was on board, she only had 2 tasks to complete. The first task was to provide me with Samantha's schedule for when she would be out of town on business. The second task was to approach Ted at the appropriate time and ask him to meet her in a public place to get closure. I was able to make Cindy laugh when I explained the first part of my plan, but I really surprised her when I laid out the second part of my plan. Cindy, do any of the ladies who do what you do ever get a social disease? It is not a potentially fatal disease like AIDS that I am referring to. What I'm referring to are the things that can be treated, such as the clap. It does occur, but it is extremely uncommon. Condoms are requested by the majority of the girls. There is a couple that I am familiar with who are willing to bareback, but they make an effort to be cautious, and they charge twice as much for the privilege. There have been a few of those girls who have been required to participate in the treatment. Would you kindly do me a favor? Inform me as soon as one of the girls has something to contribute to the discussion. I will pay her the bareback rate, and I will pay you the same amount as a finder's fee, she said. If I may ask, are you kidding me? What would you like to give to this individual? There was nothing lethal, but it was something that would ruin his wedding night. Everything was set for part 1. Cindy told me the details later that night. She was sitting at the bar in the Hyatt Lounge, sipping a Cosmo, when Ted walked in and sat next to her. Naturally, they exchanged smiles, and Ted ordered a scotch. Cindy was wearing a typical business suit and looked very professional, not that kind of pro. Ted's cell phone rang almost immediately. Without a doubt, Helen, I comprehend. I hope your mom is feeling better, Ted said as he hung up the phone and immediately turned to Cindy. Hello, I just got stood up because my date's mom is sick. Would you like me to buy you another one? An enormous smile appeared on Cindy's face as she said, Sure, I can handle 2, but don't try to get me drunk. I have been away from home for 2 weeks, and I have not seen my husband in that time. When Cindy showed me the wedding band that I had purchased from a pawn shop specifically for this occasion, it was like waving a red cape at a bull. During those 2 weeks, a girl begins to become a bit more impulsive. Ted took the bait. My name's Ted, it's a pleasure to meet you, and they drank and small-talked for a half hour. Cindy did have that third drink and did her best to act a little tipsy. Before she finished her third Cosmo, Ted was doing his best to seduce her, little touches on her arm and leg, charming conversation with enough sexual innuendo to try to warm her up. Cindy told me it was hard not to laugh at all the work he was putting into this, considering she was getting paid. She finally had enough of the seduction, finished the Cosmo, and invited him up to her room. Ted and Cindy had sex twice up in her room. Of course, Ted didn't know that the entire event was being photographed. Cindy kicked him out, claiming a need to recover and get some sleep, but not before getting his cell number. Then she and I reviewed the photos on my laptop. I promised any shots where she could be identified would be erased before either the camera or memory card left the room. Even after erasing half the photos, we still had a few dozen showing Ted and his altogether naked encounter. It was another month before the wedding, and I was hoping we would get lucky before the month was out. Within 2 weeks, Cindy called me with the news one of the girls is sick with gonorrhea. I only found out because she's asking me and another girl to cover while she takes the cure. Did you tell her about my request briefly? She's willing to have a conversation, but be aware she's a mercenary and will probably charge you another double because she figures you'll have a hard time getting a replacement. What about your rate? Does that change? No, I figure we have a deal, and you always take good care of me, which is true because I've always tipped her an extra C note. This will cost me a few GS, but it is so worth it. Cindy calls Ted the next day and says, Hey Ted dear, it's in from the Hyatt, remember me? Cindy and I met with this young lady for the purpose of working out the details for part 2. She insists that we not use her name. How could I possibly forget? Are you there in the city? Yes, she said. I was wondering if you were up for the ride of your lifetime. You are pretty full of yourself. We had a lot of fun that night, but what are you willing to do to make it the ride of my lifetime? I am currently staying at the Hyatt with a colleague who is a wild one. After hearing what I had to say to her, she believed that you would be able to handle both of us this evening. Are you able to escape? Ted's self-image led him to believe that two women would be interested in having sexual relations with him. I just need to make a quick phone call, and I'll be in the lounge. Not the lounge, just come up to room 449, we'll be here, bring some Stoli chilled. Of course. Our mystery girl was present in room 449 when Ted arrived, but Cindy was nowhere to be found. Where is Cindy? Ted asked. As he inquired, he received a phone call from his residence, which read, her son is sick, and she is currently back in her room guiding her husband through the routine. She said it's his first time dealing with a sick kid, but you and I can get started, and they did. Cindy never showed up, but our mystery girl did her best to make Ted forget about the threesome. After he left at 10, she met us at a local coffee shop and collected the balance I owe her. I admit I felt kind of shitty doing this to a guy, but he's such an ass that by the time he left, I almost felt good about it. She picked up the envelope and walked out the door. Cindy looked at me and shrugged. Told you she's a mercenary. Are you interested in having sex at your place, considering that you paid me for the night? Yes, I did, and so did we. I waited until the week after the wedding and finished my project. Both Sam and her company received envelopes in the mail with phony return addresses. Both envelopes contained a brief letter and a set of photos. Sam's letter read, Dear Mrs. Harris, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but it seems your husband and my wife have been seeing each other when she was traveling to your town. These pictures were given to me by the private investigator that I hired to get the proof. The only ones I included were those that showed his face, so there is no question in your mind that it is him. The letter to the CEO read, Dear Sir, just thought you should know what kind of man your company employs. I was not going to inform you, but I just received word from my doctor that she has infected me with a social disease. You may want to get tested, signed, the soon-to-be ex-husband of your husband's mistress. I apologize for the inconvenience. My wife claims that he picked her up at a bar, proceeded to get her drunk, and then proceeded to give her a social disease. I don't know if this letter will reach you or if you care, but I'd watch the scumbag, he seems to have no morals, signed, one sorry husband. I'm sorry that I'm writing to you. Things quickly fell into place. Sam's family had the marriage annulled, and old Ted got fired. In rumor has it, they both were on meds. It helps to have a friend in the county health service department. I pretty much went about the business of getting on with my life. Sometimes I imagine follow-up scenarios. In one scenario, I beat the living crap out of Ted. In another, I pretend to get back with Sam, take her to a foreign country, then leave her stranded there without any cards, passport, etc. I might have done it too, except for the vision of her mother and what it would do to her. I may have been that cruel to my ex-wife, but not to my former mother-in-law's daughter. On the other hand, I quickly lost interest in my new job as it became more interesting and challenging. That is, until the next Simon's family picnic. Uncle Vin, my father's older brother, was there. Uncle Vin is connected, if you get what I'm saying. He called me over, and we had a quiet conversation. Tell me about your divorce, Johnny. I'm interested. So, what took place? I told Uncle Vin the Reader's Digest version of our breakup, which was, I liked that girl. I then asked, what did you do about it then? I provided an explanation of the actions I had taken in order to exact vengeance. That is wicked, but it is not exactly scorched earth, said Uncle Vin. No, Uncle Vin. I explained to him why I had done everything in my power to put it in the past and take the moral high ground. That's great, and those are wonderful reasons. To tell you the truth, that baseball coach went out of his way to help you out. Uncle Vin was not a bigot in any way, shape, or form when it came to issues of race. However, he always found it amusing that a black man from the slums of Chicago had as much of an impact on my life as my father did. He said, if you took after that hot-headed dad of yours, you wouldn't be the man you are today. On numerous occasions, I was required to calm down my younger brother, or else he would have either been killed or sent to jail. Have you ever interacted with Coach Price, not more than a handful of times, and not since I was a junior in college, she said. Somehow, I let it slip through my fingers. You ought to look him up. His volunteer work at the Boys and Girls Club on West Palmer is very much appreciated. Inform him of the things that he has done for you. Once in a while, a man enjoys hearing something like that. On the other hand, you should go over to your father right now, give him a hug, and tell him that you love him. Additionally, he needs to hear that. My Uncle Vin was a funny guy. I've heard that he is feared by many people, but he always acted like a teddy bear around me. I would go to see Coach Price, and he convinced me to start volunteering at the club. I even started dating his niece, who was a beautiful woman. But that's another story. In other words, there was no drama, just love. Last but not least, on the occasion of my 31st birthday, I was presented with a birthday card from Uncle Vin. The card simply read, "Happy birthday, nephew." When it comes to a Simons, nobody laughs. It appears that a certain Ted Harris was discovered in the alley behind the bar that he frequents last night. He was the victim of a mugging, and although his injuries were not life-threatening, he did have a broken nose, a few broken fingers and ribs, and 2 very swollen testicles. I suppose that his black belt must have been left at home that night. Please click the subscribe button if you have made it this far, as it will be of great assistance to you. In the meantime, thank you for your attention,